One of the things that you and I talked about way back when, was setting up Cyber Huntsville. I mean, I think that you had the vision for Cyber Huntsville and said, okay, let me get some folks together. And that's what you did. And then they came across, and then not only forming Cyber Huntsville, but then also doing a Cyber Summit, which when this gets shown will already be passed. But
Yeah.
I mean, we have the National Cyber Summit here now. And can you explain a little bit more about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, being a first term mayor, I was really kind of interested in what do we need to do for the future, because we've always had kind of our eggs in the Department of Defense basket. We've had Research Park, we've had the Arsenal, and especially back in the 80s and 90s, there was a whole lot of talk about we don't have enough diversification. We have not diversified enough. And so I was sitting at SMDC conference my first year as mayor. I was sitting because there's a couple of general officers I wanted to hear, and one of them was General James Cartwright. They called him Hoss Cartwright. He was Chairman, Joint Chief of Staff, and he started talking, and he started mentioning this thing called cyber. And if you remember 15 years ago, cyber. Nobody knew what cyber was. They knew it as hacking or IT. And so he started talking cyber. And after he said about 15 times, I said, I need to find out a little bit more about this cyber and what the industry's like and what's out there. Fortunately for me, we were doing industry visits and talk and roundtables. And at one of the roundtables, Peter Kiss from Centaur was there. Centaur has a big cyber contract with Norfolk in the Navy, and I was talking about what General Cartwright had said, and I said I need some expertise in cyber, and Peter says we know a little bit about this. He knew more. He was he had his doctorate in it, but we started from there, and we grew a core group of people who were interested in the cyber industry, and the cyber industry is just blown up now. Is what is it? Half $1 trillion industry today, and we have grown with it. And as we have a lot of companies who work in the cyber world, you never realize that we have a lot of people who work in the geospatial worlds, which is mapping, and you didn't realize that. And you put both of those together, and you got a very big case for diversification. You're diversifying away from just Army Material Command missiles, NASA rockets. All of a sudden, you're into cyber, and then you're into geospatial, and those two industries are base industries that take you to other places. You can use them to take you to cyber insurance, to cyber quantification. How much is my cyber system worth, and to this and that. You can take the GIS. It's a platform for everything, for satellites in the sky, and to mapping, to everything else that affects you. Diversification is key. If we don't have that diversification, we cannot. We as a community will not continue to grow. So we diversified using the cyber method. Same thing we did in 2012 when we started having. We had 200 jobs open up at Toyota Motor Manufacturing. We had 10,000 people apply. 10,000 people for 200 jobs. We did the same thing at Polaris. We opened up, I think, 300 jobs at Polaris and had 11,000 people apply. And, it told us something. Chip Cherry, who's the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce, and I were sitting there talking. He said, that just tells you have a lot of underemployed people. So we started looking at it, and we had a very good entry-level job, so a good number of entry-level jobs. We had a good level of upper-level jobs. If you're a rocket scientist, if you're a degreed professional, if you're, a doctorate, have a doctorate and all that, very good job base there. But in the middle, we didn't have those jobs. And back in that day, we would always hear from the north end of town, which is kind of lower socioeconomic portion of town, used to be, now it's not. And they would say, we're not part of Huntsville's success. We're not part of Huntsville's progress. We don't have jobs. We don't have the big fancy stores. We don't have new houses up here. And it said, we're being left out of Huntsville's success. And, and it was something that you really hated to hear. And you would say, well, do they really have a point? And they did. They were exactly right. They were not part of it because their kids coming straight out of high school who could not go to college or didn't have the wherewithal to go to college or didn't have the money to go to college, they were kind of at a dead end. There was nothing there. With when we changed and started going after advanced manufacturing, we went after. We started with Remington, which was, a lot of people say Remington bankrupted and that was trouble, but we got our money back. And also, they were the springboard. From Remington, we got Cabela's, and the president of Cabela's had just moved over from president of Remington over to Cabela's, and that gave us a sales tax to be able to do Polaris. Then we did GE Aviation. Then we did Aerojet Rocketdyne. Then we did Blue Origin, and then finally we did Mazda Toyota. And after Mazda Toyota came Amazon. And all those were advanced manufacturing jobs. That's where a kid can come straight out of high school, or they were even taking kids with GEDs. And if you work hard, you're going to make $40,000, $60,000. If you work overtime, you're going to make $80,000 a year.
Wow! And
all of a sudden, we filled that middle gap. And when we filled that middle gap, people we don't hear the same thing that we used to hear from up in the lower socioeconomic areas. And in fact, houses are being built there. There's new jobs up there. There's new retail going in there, and so. The full picture of it is that economic development has to have some kind of strategy and some kind of plan, and you've got to diversify the base that you've got, but also you've got to make sure that you cover all bases for everybody in your community. If you do, then you're going to be a success.